Today, coming up on the program, US-Armenia signed joint deal on peaceful use of nuclear energy. US lawmakers accuse Justice Department of inappropriately redacting Epstein files. Plus, calls for UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer to resign intensifies. Welcome everyone to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. US Vice President J.D. Vance made history with a two-day visit to Armenia on Monday, the first by a US president or vice president signing a landmark deal on peaceful nuclear cooperation with Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan in Yerevan. Mr. Vance calls the agreement a new beginning in US-Armenia relations, outlining potential American exports worth up to $5 billion with an additional $4 billion in long-term fuel and maintenance support for civil nuclear projects. He also announced the sale of $11 million worth of surveillance drones to Armenia. Prime Minister Pashinyan confirmed that he had accepted an invitation from US President Donald Trump to the inaugural meeting of the new Board of Peace later this month.
Vice President J.D. Vance's visit is a crucial step in institutionalizing peace and expanding the Armenia-US strategic partnership. I presented to Mr. Vance the positive processes underway in the South Caucasus, as well as the details of the discussions that took place a few days ago in Abu Dhabi between me and the President of Azerbaijan. The discussions were aimed at potential new steps for strengthening peace between our two countries. On this occasion, I also reaffirmed Armenia's commitment to supporting the peace and peacekeeping mission of the U.S. government.
This is a beautiful country, a country that the President of the United States is very proud to partner with, that the President of the United States is very proud to have a great relationship with, and I know that President Trump sends his best regards both to you personally, but also to the people of Armenia. And what President Trump and the Prime Minister have accomplished together is really visionary. Peace is not made by cautious people. Peace is not made by people who are too focused on the past. Peace is made by people who are focused on the future. And because the Prime Minister made such great progress and has had such a great relationship with both me and the President of the United States, we're not just making peace for Armenia, we're also creating real prosperity for Armenia and the United States together. So much of the great economic cooperation that we want to announce today would not have been possible without your leadership, without the peace that you committed your country to, and without, of course, the President of the United States' leadership. And so I'm grateful for all of those things, because I really do believe that tonight marks a new beginning for Armenia and the United States and the partnership that our country can have together.
In the meantime, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is urging Iran to seize a diplomatic offer from President Donald Trump, saying it'll be a wise choice for Tehran to accept a negotiated settlement on its nuclear program. Mr. Hegseth made the remarks during a visit to the Bath Iron Works shipyard in Maine, where he underscored Washington's preference for diplomacy backed by strong military deterrence. In the same speech, he championed what he described as an arsenal of freedom and dismissed diversity and climate initiatives within the Pentagon, reflecting a broader push to prioritize defense production. The comments come as indirect U.S.-Iran talks resume in Oman after an 8-month pause.
We're the Strength Department. Our job is to be that hammer when necessary, and I'm hopeful we don't have to use it. That's the idea of deterrence. You get peace through deterrence, but if you must fight, you will be unleashed to fight to win. Overwhelmingly. Not fight politically correct, overwhelming violence of action at the decisive moment so the enemy knows exactly what you mean. First and foremost, in our department, we're reviving the warrior ethos. We're eliminating distractions and debris. No more DEI No more dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship, social justice, or political correctness. We're done with all that garbage. We're done with our diversity is our strength, which is the single dumbest phrase in military history. Our diversity is our strength. Our generals used to say it time and time again with a straight face. No. I see a lot of different faces out here from different backgrounds, and that's a beautiful thing. But the reality is your unity is your strength. Your shared purpose is your strength. What you're able to do together with a common purpose and a common mission is what makes America special and different. So we're unleashing our warfighters to get back to basics. They'll be ready, they'll be trained, they'll be disciplined, accountable, and lethal. That's the whole point. When I talk to President Trump, then I'm going to talk to a group like this, of folks in uniform or in hard hats. I say, what do you want me to say? And he always says, you know, Pete, just tell him I love him. Because he does. He wants the best for our troops, and he wants the best for you. And that's why, in addition to rebuilding the military, we're reestablishing deterrence. And the president has been clear to Iran. He wants a negotiated settlement. I think it would be a wise choice for them to take him up on that deal. The world saw America's capabilities, peace through strength, deterrence in action. We were out of Iran before Iran even knew we were there. No other country can do that. You're seeing something similar with narco-terrorists in our own hemisphere. How long have we been talking about going after drugs that have poisoned Americans and wrecked our communities? For the longest time, too long. It was a catch and release program, a law enforcement function that didn't work. We'd catch the same traffickers and let them go. They'd go right back to it, no deterrence at all. But these narco-terrorists and designated terrorist organizations, they were targeting our communities. This community, my community, your community, our kids and our people in our country. They knew exactly what they were doing, poisoning our country with fentanyl, cocaine, and any number of other drugs. So instead of a catch and release program, President Trump demanded, if you're going to sail drugs in international waters, we will target your drug boats and we will sink them.
Elsewhere in the United States, U.S. lawmakers are raising concerns over improperly redacted files related to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, weeks after the Department of Justice began releasing documents under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Members of Congress, including Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, told reporters that many names of alleged co-conspirators were still blacked out, even as victims' identities were being carefully protected. They said some redactions appear to have been made by the FBI last March before the documents reached the Department of Justice. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche responded by unredacting non-victim names, linking to updated files and insisting that the department remains committed to transparency. Lawmakers said errors persist, highlighting documents referencing alleged co-conspirators and discussions of criminal activity, including a torture video and international travel linked to Epstein's network. The controversy underscores ongoing tensions over public access, accountability, and how the U.S. justice system handles sensitive material involving powerful figures. Let's get more on this. Joining us now is Maria Bird, Channels TV correspondent in Washington, D.C. Maria, great to see you. What's the current status of the unredacted Jeffrey Epstein files, and how many documents are still under review by Congress?
Well, the amount of documents that are under review is astronomical. One of the congressmen mentioned it would take almost 7.5 years to go through all the documents. They're now in a room where there's just 4 computers. Congressional members are not allowed to bring phones, any type of camera devices, just themselves and the 4 computers when they do go in to review the files. And so congressmen have gone in, they have reviewed them, and they have been able to identify what they're calling 6 prominent figures that were redacted from the documents that they're calling for the FBI or the DOJ. There has been thoughts that maybe the DOJ did not redact those. Maybe these were redacted before they received them from the FBI. And so they are calling for that to be rectified. They're also looking to see the president's involvement and to see what types of information could be gleaned from these documents related to Mar-a-Lago. The only thing that is actually seen at this time is where Jeffrey Epstein was seen as a guest. He was not provided membership, and so that does lend to potentially no co-conspiring efforts there, is what the congressional members are foreseeing. But this is going to be a very long process for them. They're going to be spending many hours. And so the question is just how long will they spend trying to identify any additional information that could be critical to this investigation?
Right, and the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, says that the DOJ is committed to transparency. How credible is this claim? And are there still concerns about omissions or errors?
Well, there is concerns about omissions and those are redacted pieces. Errors have not yet been formally stated. I think what's going to be of the utmost importance for congressional members now is to identify how to call those individuals that are believed to be potentially co-conspirators, that are prominent figures. As I mentioned, this is a global piece. This is just even beyond the United States. And so what they're really calling for, congressional members are calling for an action by the Department of Justice. They're calling for action by the United States to call individuals to be accountable for what they're reading in these files that would obviously have been against the law in the United States.
And some of the files reportedly include references to international figures, travel, and even alleged criminal activity. Can you give us more detail on the contents that are drawing the most scrutiny?
Yes, the contents that are drawing the most scrutiny at this time are really around those actually events and activities where they saw underage young girls and what they're calling sex trafficking potentially. And so that is where the focal point is in showing and identifying, as you mentioned, world leaders. And so what they're actually calling for, in addition to the 6 prominent U.S. figures, but for there is supposedly a foreign leader they would like to be released as far as that information goes, to be able to provide some context around how this far reaching beyond just even the United States. We know that through what we've seen in the UK and connections there. And so this is going to definitely be a congressional push for these hearings to exist and for this information to not be redacted, but to be allowed to be public information that people are able to attain.
And beyond the legal implications, what has been the public and or political reaction in Washington, both from lawmakers and from advocacy groups representing Epstein's victims?
Well, I think the key components here, the congressional members are obviously calling for and requesting action. They are saying that this is something that should never have been taken this long, that there should not be this type of redaction, and that we do need to call people to be accountable. So the congressional members are very focused on this. And obviously the victims and the attorneys are very focused. Unfortunately, this has been quite a challenging time in the United States. And so what we've seen from the American public, as much as they would love to see individuals being accountable if there was wrongdoing there, there's just so many other competing challenges that the public is expecting to hear more. But at this time, they're just waiting to get some real information that could be substantial to provide some context to really how far-reaching this case is.
Maria, thanks again. We have more of this, but over in the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing growing pressure amid controversy over the appointment of former diplomat Peter Mandelson as ambassador to Washington. During a heated House of Commons debate, opposition MPs accused Mr. Starmer of ignoring warnings about Mr. Mandelson's past association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien said the Prime Minister cannot keep blaming others and called on him to take personal responsibility, warning that his authority is gone and that his government is starting to collapse. However, government ministers defended the Prime Minister, stressing that Epstein's crimes were abhorrent, reiterating the administration's commitment to protecting women and girls. The Prime Minister has already lost his Chief of Staff and Communications Director over the row, while his Scottish Party leader, Anasawa, has called for his resignation. Mr. Starmer says he regrets the appointments, but maintains he was misled about Mr. Mandelson's conduct.
Jeffrey Epstein was a despicable criminal who committed disgusting crimes. The Epstein scandal is another awful example of a culture that did not value the lives, let alone the voices, of women and girls. The series and sequencing of events across the last week has rightly made clear to us all that for too long and too often, influential people in positions of power, overwhelmingly men, have been able to avoid proper and just scrutiny because of the perverse power structures that incentivize their belief that rules do not apply to them. And if I may say so, Mr. Speaker, members chuntering from the benches opposite, whilst I am talking about the victims of sexual abuse and abuse of power, should know better and should recognise that they should be quiet and listen when we are talking about the victims and the justice they deserve to seek. Peter Mandelson's disgraceful behaviour raises a number of questions about the ability of the current standard system to catch those few who seek to break our rules. This damages all of us across the House.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's authority is gone and his government is starting to collapse. But the PM's decision to appoint Peter Mandelson raises massive questions about standards in public life, questions which the Minister's statement today just doesn't answer. Mr. Speaker, advisers advise, but ministers decide. And on that basis, can the Minister explain why it was right for Morgan McSweeney to resign, but not right for the Prime Minister to resign? Morgan McSweeney might have provided the advice, but it was the Prime Minister who made the decision to appoint the best friend of the world's most notorious paedophile to be His Majesty's ambassador in Washington. And the PM did this despite knowing that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's house while he was in jail for child prostitution. The problem is not the structures or the processes. The information was there. The warnings were there.
Staying with the issue, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says the UK Prime Minister's political career is drawing to a close amid the ongoing controversy over Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador to Washington. Speaking in Birmingham, Mr. Farage describes the Mandelson saga as probably the biggest political scandal in the UK for 100 years, accusing Mr. Starmer of losing credibility, control and respect, and saying he must resign in the national interest.
Transport Secretary, an ex-cop, had to resign over misleading the police. His
And US President Donald Trump has threatened to block the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge connecting Michigan in the United States to Ontario in Canada, insisting that Washington must be fully compensated for everything it has given to its northern neighbor. Construction of the $6.4 billion bridge funded by Canada began in 2018. The project, publicly owned by Canada and Michigan, is expected to open to traffic early this year, pending final tests and approvals. President Trump claims that the United States should own at least half of the bridge and demands Ottawa treat Washington with fairness and respect. Michigan Senator Elisa Slotkin has warned that delaying the bridge would hurt the state's economy, potentially putting jobs at risk. The Gordie Howe Bridge has been a point of contention for more than a decade, and Trump's latest comments add a new layer of tension to US-Canada infrastructure and trade relations. Meanwhile, the United Nations has called on Israel to reverse what it describes as destabilizing and unlawful measures in the occupied West Bank. Speaking in New York on Monday, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres' spokesperson Stefan Dujarric warned that the decision to authorize administrative and enforcement actions in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, undermines prospects for a two-state solution. He reiterates that all Israeli settlements in the territory have no legal validity and violate international law. Asked whether the measures amount to de facto annexation, Mr. Dujarric avoided a direct answer but said the move is driving us further and further away from a two-state solution. The Palestinian Authority has condemned the decision and called for international intervention. In a separate development, the UN confirmed that South Africa will withdraw its remaining troops from a peacekeeping mission, a significant shift for a country long committed to UN operations in Africa, particularly in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
The Secretary General is gravely concerned by the reported decision of the Israeli Security Cabinet to authorize a series of administrative and enforcement measures in Area A and Area B of the occupied West Bank. The Secretary General warns that the current trajectory on the ground, including this decision, is eroding the prospects for a two-state solution. He reiterates that all Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem and their associated regime and infrastructure, have no legal validity and are in flagrant violation of international law, including relevant United Nations resolutions. Such actions, including Israel's continuing presence in the occupied Palestinian territory, are not only destabilizing, but, as recalled by the International Court of Justice, unlawful. The Secretary General calls on Israel to reverse these measures and all parties to preserve the only path to lasting peace, which is a negotiated settlement for a two-state solution in line with relevant Security Council resolutions and international law.
And finally on the program, Cebu in the Philippines is now home to the world's largest claw machine, attracting crowds eager to try their luck at winning oversized prizes. The Claw King stands nearly 4 meters tall with a 50 cubic meter prize pit. Players take turns guiding the giant claw, hoping to grab a toy and sometimes walking away empty-handed. Co-owner Aaron Teves says the goal was to create a memorable attraction for Cebu, while technical head Richard Rolls explains that the machine uses the same mechanics as smaller claw games, just scaled up with a larger claw joystick and customized prize. The machine has earned a Guinness World Record, surpassing previous records, and plays remain affordable at just 50 pesos or just about 95 cents. Cebu's Claw King combines a classic arcade challenge with record-breaking skill, appealing to both families and gaming enthusiasts. That's the world today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.